I'm with Billy Macleod from Veterans in Action. Now, Billy, what is Veterans in Action?
Well, we're a charity that helps veterans who are suffering with post-traumatic stress. We use a long-term approach at dealing with veterans, and we work on building things like trucks. We build Land Rovers, which we use for humanitarian aid or overland expeditions. And the veterans are involved in the first process of stripping the truck down to building it. So, in fact, what we really do is build people, and one of the methodologies we use is building vehicles.
When were you started and why were you started?
We started in 2009. I was going through a bit of a tough time mentally myself. I couldn't find anything that I wanted to do. I'd tried therapy, it just wasn't for me. So I did a bit of studying and found a program in Australia called Wilderness and Adventure Therapy. And from there, I took what I could from that project, that program, and developed it around veterans. And basically, it was trying to get myself better. And I knew if I could do something that I enjoyed doing, other veterans would enjoy it too.
Is it difficult for veterans to settle back into civilian life after leaving the army?
I think it's probably one of the biggest adjustments we have to make in life. Many of us joined the army very young. I was 16 and 5 days when I joined the army. So I was in the school on a Friday and in the army on a Monday. So as my early adult life, all I ever knew was a life cocoon within the military, which took care of every part of your needs, like dentists, doctors, food, accommodation, all of this. You didn't have to worry about all that stuff. You paid for it, but it was all taken care of. So leaving the camp for the last time is quite a scary place to be. And I would say the biggest mental health issue we have with veterans is veterans leaving the military as opposed to post-traumatic stress.
Do many suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yeah, we do. It's slightly higher than the civilian population. I reckon the civilian population is around 4%, and they say it's 7% of the military. But that's obviously during times of conflict. That's probably going back down again now that we're not fighting. But during Afghanistan and Iraq and all the previous wars to that, it was around 7%.
Mm. Tell us about the Alive program.
So the live program is what I've designed over the last 15, 16 years. It's just a way of how we grow people, and it's based on a study from America called post-traumatic growth. Before I knew about post-traumatic growth, we had already been doing it, and then I was ill myself, and I was in hospital for 5 months, and I started studying again. And I found this project in America from an organization called Boulder Crest Retreat, who had done a study on post-traumatic growth, and I realized that's what we'd been doing for a long time. And it basically means despite having post-traumatic stress, there's certain aspects of your life that can be better, or we believe you can be taught to grow because not everybody knows how to grow.
Is this just bringing dignity and hope back?
Well, it's more about rebuilding them again, as in from when we usually get them, we usually get a lot of the most damaged cases of post-traumatic stress. They're usually in a really, really bad way when we get them. So it's about breaking that all down, i.e. the metaphor of building vehicles. We strip the vehicle down and then we build it back up again. And that's basically what we do with veterans. The way the system works in the United Kingdom is, and I'm sure it's other places as well, is that we tend to medicate first so that people can't feel anything. And I can only talk about the veterans community there, so that's what I'll talk about. We medicate them so they feel nothing, and then we tell them to go and do therapy. But how can you possibly do therapy if you can't feel anything due to the medication? So our way of looking at it is we look at everything first that's not post-traumatic stress, all the stuff that surrounds it, like housing, benefits, all the kind of welfare issues that they carry around with them that makes the illness worse. And once we sort that out, we then work on the therapy side. We don't do therapy ourselves. We refer to what is the best thing for the British soldiers at the moment, or service personnel, which is Op Courage, which is the National Health Service, but only for the military. So we refer into there, and at all times during therapy, they stay involved with what we're doing in the projects that we run.
You do something called a live virtual challenge. What is that?
So our live virtual challenges is that came in during COVID. Our way of funding ourselves, because we're only a small charity, was always about bucket rattling in the streets at football matches or rugby matches. So when COVID came along, we couldn't do that anymore and we didn't know how we could survive. So our live virtual challenges was all about people doing a challenge at home, like say setting themselves to do 100 kilometers in a month or something like that and getting fundraising for the distance they were doing. And that kept us going all the way through for the next few years, I suppose, until we got hit with the new financial crisis, which actually meant people weren't doing things like that anymore. They were looking at number one, which is rightly so. They had to look after their own families. So it became difficult again to bring money in, but we still do the odd one every now and again. People still can sign up to do challenges.
Do these projects help veterans with confidence and purpose? And are they now helping others, giving to other people as well?
Well, the whole idea, it's a mentorship. So, like all the people here at Veterans in Action, we've all kind of been through stuff ourselves. And so we become the mentors for the people coming in, who then become the mentors for those that follow behind them. And it's all about a community, as in we have a very precise way of speaking to each other within the military. And I'm sure there's other organisations like the Blue Light Services the same. We're very supportive, but at the same time, we're brutal with each other. We kind of encourage each other along in some of the most brutal ways sometimes, but everybody knows it's for the right purpose. And it's similar to the military about how we encourage people to improve their lives and the challenges they have with that, with support.
Now, you recently went to Israel after the October the 7th terrorist attack. Where did you go and what did you see?
Well, I started off in Jerusalem, and I was quite taken aback with that Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived in harmony there, and they worked together, and the society was all the same for them. And then from there, first place we went to was Kibbutz Be'eri. We were shown round by one of the residents there, who actually wasn't there on October 7th because it was a Jewish holiday on that day, so he was on a beach somewhere. But his brother was one of the ones that put up a fight. He was one of the security guards at the kibbutz, and they had a firefight with Hamas from, I think it was 7 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where finally they ran out of ammunition and were killed by Hamas. We went from there to the Nova Festival, and we spoke to some of the people there at the Nova Festival, and I have to say that was incredibly brutal for me. When I found out the scale of what happened, which is not ever really reported on properly. From there, we went back to Tel Aviv, and we went to Hostage Square. We were shown around there where they have the rallies every weekend. And from there to Hostage HQ with the charity Bring Them Home. And we met some of the families of the hostages, and they told us their stories from October 7th.
Now, you've been a soldier, but were you shocked at this?
We were shocked at the scale, brutality we've seen before. The scale of the attack is the thing that's not really reported on in the UK or in other countries. It's like 3,000 Hamas crossed the border at 6:30 in the morning, and they were followed by a second wave, and then a third wave of civilians followed behind them. I don't think anybody in the UK understands the scale of that and the amount of atrocities that were actually committed.
Imagine it was like a war zone, actually just going down there and seeing all this destruction.
Well, obviously, by the time I got there, a lot of the stuff had been cleared from the kibbutzes, i.e. the blood and the gore, but the burnt out buildings were still there. And when you had a guide to take us around, who was a resident of Be'eri, he described things in detail to us of what happened to individuals. I think one of them has just been, one of the hostages taken from there was just found killed in the tunnels in Rafah recently. Carmel, she was found recently, murdered in the tunnels. So it does hit home when you hear the stories of the individuals and what actually happened.
Why did you want to visit, and how many people of the team went?
Why did I want to visit? So for me, it was a kind of dual purpose. One, I knew what we were being told in the media wasn't the full story. And I think to get to the truth, you have to hear another side of the story. And somewhere in between will lie the truth. And the other reason for me was because I work with veterans with PTSD, I wanted to visit veterans hospitals out there to see how they were working with veterans suffering with PTSD. And I got to do that and met some of the organizations over there. And that was a good experience talking to some of the veterans who had been injured physically and some of it psychologically.
How many people from your team went?
Well, it was only myself from Veterans in Action went. I went with another group organised by a company called BICOM, which is a British-Israeli kind of organisation. And they wanted non-Jews to go to see the truth of what happened.
Of course, everything that happened on October the 7th, it's not the normal rules of war, is it?
There was no rules.
What is your hope for the future of your organisation?
Well, I've already had some grief about my trip to Israel. Obviously, there's a lot of people who don't agree with my stance on it. But my stance was genuine. I wanted to find out the truth, and I wanted to find out. I'm always looking to strive to learn as much about PTSD as I can so we can do better here in this country. but also share the knowledge I've got with other countries like the United States or Israel or other countries that we come in contact with, like Ukraine. I've been out to Ukraine a few times as well. And so for me, the future of the charity is all based around the support we get from the public, which this stance I'm taking on Israel could damage that in a way, I suppose.
Is the National Health Service doing enough to help veterans with PTSD?
I think they're doing as much as they can within the Op Courage program. I believe it's a good program, but it's quite geographical. Some areas are good, some areas are bad. I happen to be in one of the areas where it's not too bad. And I think the truth of it is, though, is that the way we work our system, as I mentioned earlier, if we just keep on putting people into medication and therapy, it'll just be a revolving door for the rest of their life. We have to look at positive action as well. So include therapy with action. So they have to be involved with things that allow them to use the tools they're given during therapy to allow them to grow.
Mm. What's your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
www.veteransinaction.org.uk.
Well, Billy, thank you very much for sharing today.
No problem at all. I'm glad I got to talk to you.